Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mrs. Dewar, and we're going to continue our work with slope and writing equations of lines. Today we're going to work on parallel and perpendicular lines and talk about how the slope will be related to each. This will be part one of our two-part series, and this is just the basic of parallel and perpendicular lines, and when you want to get into writing equations, you can check out part two. Parallel lines do not intersect, and the way that works is they have the same tilt, meaning they go in the same direction. So, for example, if you take a look at this line here and consider the slope, you're going up 2 to the right 5. This line has a slope of 2/5. Now, if you put up another line that's parallel to the first line, it will have the same tilt, meaning it will have the same slope. You're going up 2 for every 5 you go to the right. So what you'll notice is parallel lines have the same slope. And we're going to use that quite a bit when asked to write equations of lines. For right now, we're just going to practice a little bit with this and talk about what it means. In this case, you're given two equations, and I'm asking you to determine whether they're parallel or not. And we don't always want to graph these because you can tell a lot from an equation by looking at the slope and the y-intercept. But for right now, because I wanted this to be visual, I'm going to graph this for you. So I'm starting at 2, and I'm going up 3 over 1 to get my line. The second one has a y-intercept of -1, but a slope of 3. So I go up 3 over 1 to get my line. And as you can see, they are parallel, and they do have the same slopes. So the visual kind of shows why the same slopes makes the lines parallel. Now, let's do this without a graph. If you take a look at these slopes, both equations are in slope-intercept form. You can tell both slopes are -4, and that's enough to say that the lines are going to be parallel. Here's another example. Now, if you take a look at these slopes, they are not exactly the same. One of them is negative, so these are not parallel lines. They have to be exactly the same slope. Now, perpendicular lines are lines that intersect at a right angle or 90-degree angle. Perpendicular lines obviously don't have the same slope, but the slopes are related. So I'm just going to give you the same line I gave you before, the slope being 2/5, and then let's talk about another line that would be perpendicular to it. Perpendicular, you can see it's crossing. It appears to be a right angle. If you look at the slope, you're going to go up 5 and then left 2. And so what we find is that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slopes, meaning there's going to be one positive, one negative, and they'll be reciprocals, or one will be the other one flipped around. So we're going to do another visual, and then we'll get away from the graph in a minute. The first equation here has a y-intercept of 2. So I would start there, and then I would use the slope to go up 1 over 2, get a second point, and draw the line. Now my second equation has a y-intercept of -1 and a slope of -2, so that tells me to go down and to the right. And you can see these do appear to be perpendicular. And what you really want to look at is the slopes. They are definitely opposite. One's positive and one's negative, and they are reciprocals, so that does confirm that the lines are perpendicular. Now let's do this without a graph. If you look at these equations and you want to know if they are perpendicular lines, look at their slopes. These slopes are opposite reciprocals, and that makes them perpendicular. Here's another example. Both equations are in slope-intercept form, so it makes our job real easy. You can see the slopes. You can see that they are reciprocals, but they're not opposite. They're missing, one of them is missing a negative to be perpendicular, so these lines won't be perpendicular because they don't have opposite reciprocal slopes. So one of the common questions you'll be asked is determine whether the lines of the equations are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. And again, all you need to do is look at the slopes. These slopes are definitely not the same, which means they're not parallel. To be perpendicular, they have to be opposite reciprocals, and these are. So we'll say these are perpendicular. Here's another example. These two slopes are not the same. They are reciprocals, but both of them are positive, so these are not perpendicular. We can say neither. These lines have the same exact slope, so that makes them parallel. And these have opposite slopes, but not reciprocal, so they're not perpendicular, and they're not parallel because one's positive and one is negative. So we will say neither. So here's a question. What is the slope of the line that is parallel to the line with the equation y equals negative 3x plus 2? And so to answer this, all you need to do is find the slope of your line. Know that parallel lines have the same slopes, so they will share a slope. Our slope is negative 3, you can see that, and that makes the other slope negative 3 as well. What is the slope of a line that is parallel to this line? Now, this one's a little harder because it's not in slope-intercept form. So we're going to have some work to do here. What we need to do is find the slope of the line, and to do that, we have to put the equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so let's take this equation. Let's move the x term to the right. Notice how the sign changed. And then we divide everything by 2. And you can see now the slope is 7 over 2. So these lines are supposed to be parallel. So if our slope is 7 over 2, both lines have a slope of 7 over 2. Now I'm going to ask you about perpendicular. What is the slope of a line that is perpendicular to this line with the equation negative 7x plus 2y equals 4? Now we do know that perpendicular lines aren't the same, but they are opposite reciprocals. So I want to get the slope. I still need to do the same thing as before. Find the slope of the line, and to do that, we have to put the equation in slope-intercept form. All right, so you saw this done a minute ago. This is exactly the same work. Bring the 7x over, make it positive, divide everything by 2, and you'll be able to see your slope. Now, the only difference is this time you're going to say our slope is negative 2, negative 7 over 2, but because the lines are perpendicular, the other line will have a slope. You flip it, and you add a negative 2/7. So that'll do it for part 1. If you want to get into writing the equations, check out part 2. If you're interested in the unit I have that goes along with this video, just click on the link below. Don't forget to hit that like button. That really helps me out. Thanks a lot.